Want to have to do that interview. I really thought about canceling it. There's no upside for me to do that interview. There's no upside. The only upside was that maybe I could convince Cornel West to have a more coherent message that reaches across class lines, like Bernie Sanders' campaign was able to do. In 31 out of the 99 counties in Iowa, 31 of those voted for Barack Obama twice. 31 of those then voted for Donald Trump. So does that not tell you something and about how you got to organize these people? And so that's all I'm trying to do. And I think the bigger problem with Cornel West's message is that he can't stop saying that Joe Biden is better than Donald Trump and Donald Trump is a fascist and we have to be afraid of fascism. If he stopped doing that, his campaign would get a lot more traction. That's the bigger issue I was trying to impress upon him. The smaller issue was the one when he talks about identity politics. Because if he didn't talk about LGBTQ, trans, all that stuff, then he would have more of a focus on the things that separate him and differentiate him from the Democratic Party. Everybody knows Cornel West supports LGBTQ, trans. Everybody knows that, just like everybody knew Bernie did. And so that was the point of that. But again, the bigger issue, and the Revolutionary Blackout Network had tried to impress upon this on Cornell as well, and so did Jill Stein's vice presidential candidate,
Ajama
Baraka.
Yeah.
He said that the Democrats are not the lesser of two evil. The Democrats are fascists, just like the Republicans, and they work for the same people. So that's the bigger message. So that's my bigger message. And then I think we got into the weeds over identity politics and white supremacy. And so I don't know what people think white people hear when they say white supremacy, but it's not what they think they hear. It's divisive. It sounds like you're calling white people racist. That's what white people think when they hear that. I don't know what they mean by it, because the Democrats call everything that they don't like white supremacist, right? So, for instance, if you said that the virus came from the lab, you were called a white supremacist. If you said that natural immunity was better than was real. How about that? Just natural immunity to COVID was real. You were called a white supremacist. So now anything the Democrats don't like, they call a white supremacist. And so it just sounds like a Democratic message. So that was my point. And to put it to, and it seemed like Cornel West wraps every message he ends with white supremacy. I heard him end with male supremacy.
Yeah.
So, and as we've discovered over the past months, that all this kind of talk, this DEI stuff, diversity,
equity
and inclusion, that's all coming from the top down. All this trans and LGBTQ talking, that's coming from the top down. It's not coming from the grassroots. This is coming from the top down because the Democrats have nothing else to run on. They have nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
So that they talk about LGBTQ, and then they bastardize the idea of white supremacy, and then they just throw it against anything they don't like. So now it's lost all meaning. So that was my point. My point isn't that black activists shouldn't be talking about white supremacy and connecting it to class. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when you talk about that in the context of a presidential campaign, you end up sounding just like the Democrats, just like he did for most of that interview when he wanted to argue with me that Trump is the greater evil and the Democrats are the lesser of evil. That was his message when he came on my show.
Yeah. Was
that the Democrats were the lesser of two evils, and that Trump is a greater evil that we all have to fear because it's fascism. And then when I pointed out to him that, the Black Agenda report, black radicals are the ones who have said that the Democrats are not the lesser of two evil. Radical activists, not Jimmy Dore. They're the ones who have said that the Democrats are not the lesser of two evil, and the Democrats are fascist. So when I said that to Cornel West, he then implied that I was a hidden Trump supporter, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because that's exactly what they say to him. So just whenever you get to the left of somebody, that seems to be their flex, right? I was afraid he was going to call me a Putin puppet next for being against the Ukraine war, because that's what they're doing to him. And then they're also calling him a Trump supporter. They're doing that to him. They're saying he's helping Trump. That's what. So to have him use that back against me was, in the nicest way possible, completely disgusting.
Yeah.
And undermines his own case. So he didn't have something to say back. I was echoing what black radical activists said about the Democratic Party, and he didn't want to hear it. And he didn't know what to say, and his flex was to try to smear me. That's what he did. Just like he's being smeared. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world, and it's because he didn't have an answer for it. And it's because he's really campaigning for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party when he says those things.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't realize it, I just don't believe he doesn't realize that. I just, there's no way he does not. Everybody's tried to tell him that. So that's the bigger issues. That is the bigger issue. The smaller issue is the white supremacy. But I just want to let him know, nobody knows what he's talking about when he says it. And if you have to get a dictionary to explain people what you mean by it, you've already lost the argument.
Yeah.
And again, people keep thinking that somehow I'm attacking Cornel. I'm trying to make Cornel West a better candidate so more people will vote for him. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to make him a better candidate. So, and I think I saw this, and I think this typifies it pretty well. It says, what has the focus on race and white supremacy managed to secure in terms of improving material conditions for poor and working class black people over the past 40 years? White supremacy is an ideology. Class structure is not. Do notice how one can talk about white supremacy all day long because the Democrats want you to. One is encouraged to do it, in fact. Democrats, corporate to progressive, talk about it. So does the CIA, the FBI, and the Pentagon. So do all the major corporations and financial institutions. I saw a thing from Bank of America yesterday talking about white supremacy. Bank of America, the biggest oppressor of black people. So do all the major corporations and financial institutions. So does the mainstream media. Why? Because racial parity politics doesn't bother capitalism one bit. Calling out white supremacy has no effect on class structure, but it does make the DEI industry lots of money. Adolph Reed Jr. analysis of poverty and the contemporary black politics is correct. Everything has changed except the way it's talked about. Fixating on racial disparities distracts from the pervasive influence of class, and it ends up legitimizing economic inequality. So let me take a pause right here because I have to get a video I want to show you, and we'll be right back. Theo Vaughn, and he grew up poor like I did. I grew up really poor. I grew up drinking powdered milk. I didn't even drink real milk till I was in 7th grade. I didn't even have my own. Anyway, doesn't matter. I had to go. I went to free dentists. They didn't use Novocaine when they drilled my cavities. That's real. So Theo had a similar upbringing, and he's going to talk about what he hears when people talk like that. Here's what he said.
So I grew up in my neighborhood. We didn't have a lot of diversity in my neighborhood. Diversity is always people's talking about it. And we didn't have it. You know, my neighborhood was poor black, poor white. That was our neighborhood, you know. So I didn't feel any white privilege. I know some people had it, man, you know. I knew some motherfuckers with sweaters. But I was 2 tank tops in the winter, okay? And I just didn't feel it, you know? I wish I'd have had some white privilege, dude. Sign me up. But I didn't have it, man. It was just poor black kids, poor white kids, man. And my poor black friends would always be like, man, look what you did to us. And I'm like, dude, do you think I would do all that shit to y'all and then move right next door, bro? Now, we gonna split this plum or not, dog? We're in this together, man.
And that's the message. We're in this together. That's what I was trying to impress upon Cornel West. And I'm not saying at all that black activists shouldn't talk about white supremacy or connect it to class. That's all. I'm saying that in the context of a presidential campaign, maybe I'm incorrect, but Chris Hedges educated me on Fred Hampton a little bit, and he told me that he reached out the way that he reached out to the Young Patriot organization, which was a racist organization. He organized with them. He against the man. Together, they had common interests. Let's go against the man. And so that's all I was encouraging him to do. And I think the bigger issue is that when he wraps everything in LGBTQ, trans, and white supremacy, that he's playing into the hands of the Democratic Party. Just like when he says that Trump is a greater evil, he's playing into the hands of the Democrats. He's actually campaigning for them when he does that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying what he is saying is incorrect about LGBTQ or white supremacy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he's playing into the Democrats' game when he does that, and that's a misstep to do it that way. And apparently he doesn't have any advisors, so I've told it right to him. And again, I would have loved to have done that in private. They don't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear it in public. They don't want to hear anything. So that's all I have to say about that for the moment, for the time being. I'm sure this will come up more, and I'm glad it spurred a lot of conversations, and I'm glad it has, because we need to have this conversation, and we need to understand that, and we have to stop letting the establishment and the BlackRock, which is where this stuff comes from, divide us in identity politics. It wants us to think of ourselves as separate. It doesn't want us to think as a collective. And that's where all this is coming from right now. And that's why the Democrats and Bank of America have embraced talking about white supremacy.
Yeah.
Not because they care about it and are going to do anything about it, but because they know it's a way to manipulate us and keep us separate. Okay. And again, if it's just stunning to me how few people can tell the difference between someone trying to encourage someone to be better because they support their platform and someone criticizing someone and trying to knock them down. I'm not trying to knock down Cornel West one bit. I'm trying to help Cornel West have a more coherent strategy that actually can do damage to the establishment and wield power. That's what I'm trying to do. It's obvious that's what I'm trying to do. And the people who don't see that I think are just that bad faith actors. Just like Cornel West bad faith attacked me, just the way he's been bad faith attacked. It's crazy that the left can't get their game together, especially after 8 years of Barack Obama doing right-wing policies, and now after 3 years of Joe Biden being an unbelievable fascist, crushing workers' unions. Anyway, I don't have much more time to talk about this today, so I'll just leave it.
Even Kurt said, I don't even know what that means. And I think it's okay when you're talking about white supremacy for us to have conversations about that. And I'm willing to sit down with RBN and Nico House and be educated on what they think it means today. But if you have to bring that dictionary, you need elevator pitches over here. This is a presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. And the one area I think that you shouldn't have had to apologize, but you did, was when Cornel West kept on saying, I can think for myself. You're supposed to have a presidential campaign that's supposed to have a plan in place to go after people across party lines. And whether you like the People's Party or not, since he's moved away and went to the Green Party completely, it's like he's staying in his own little echo chamber of progressives and leftists that you're not going to win. You're not going to be serious about running a presidential campaign here.
They're not trying to expand his reach.
It's terrible. He's got zero populist message.
I mean, the Green
zero.
The Green Parties, they russiagated themselves.
Yeah,
they russiagated themselves. The Green Party. So we know the Green Party's infiltrated, and the messaging is just horrible out of the Green Party. Absolutely horrible. And now Cornel West has picked up their horrible messaging.
Yeah.
So
And where was his mind at the very end? I just want to say this too as well. When he said he agreed, he wanted to have a truth commission, all that stuff, but then to go and kick yourself right in the dick.
So we agreed,
when you're doing that stuff.
So we agreed that when he said they're going to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for what happened during COVID, I was going like this, yes, and then he immediately goes, but that's not important to me, and it shouldn't be important to you. That's the biggest. And it's like, well, you just had a victory, and you snatched victory. You snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory. That's what he just did there. So then immediately he said it's not important to him. It's not important, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history, because that's what the CARES Act was. And they did it under the guise of helping people for COVID because of lockdowns which were never needed, which were a nefarious, evil plot to crush small businesses, 41% of black businesses. That's what that was. And then they did the CARES Act because they were going to help those. The CARES Act was the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history that just devastated black-owned businesses. And Cornel West said, not a big deal. And he made it look like it was some kind of fetish of mine or something. I'm not kidding. The most depressing 45 minutes of my life. And I'm still upset. I'm still rattled by it. Honest to God, I'm rattled by it. I'm super rattled, and especially that he did to me what the bad faith attackers do to him. That was just the lowest thing that has happened to me in doing this show. So anyway, we got to move on. Let's go to a card.